Hello, everybody. Louise Eddington, the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology. And the eclipses are coming. I'm recording this on September the 1st. I'm not going to publish the actual video for a few days, but I'm recording this the day before the Virgo new moon. And we feel the eclipses coming already. I've already recorded a radio show on Ohm Times Radio with Kathy Beale about the upcoming eclipses. But there's several reasons that why these eclipses are huge and just just a lot to talk about, but I'm gonna try and get through it fast and tell you why I think this eclipse is extra special. The next one, the partial lunar eclipse on September the 17th. All right, so I'm going to share the card first of all, I think. Then we're going to look at the chart, then I'll talk about it. Then I'm going to share some other stuff about the what's happening in the skies, not just the astrology chart. And then I'll read all the symbols at the end because they're pretty magical too. So this is the card I pulled. Looks a bit gloomy, right? But it isn't. The Ten of Wands really is about leaving your burdens behind. This is releasing your burdens to the ethers and trusting the universe to help tend to the essentials. That is, even though this is a Wands card, which is fire, just that trust and release is so Pisces eclipse in so many ways. And we're going to talk about that as well. So we are, this is, this can also mean though that you feel like you've taken on too much. You've got many burdens, you've got many responsibilities, you're feeling a bit weighty. And the eclipse being a lunar eclipse, a full moon eclipse, is saying, uh, this is a chance to understand why you're taking on so much and finding yourself very close to a successful outcome. Now, that's the version of the interpretation of this card from the Light Seers Tarot, which is the deck that I'm using, the Tarot for Light Seers. But in my book, let's have a look. I've decided I really should be using my book that I wrote and my books. I'm going to be talking about all three of my books more in the future. But the Ten of Wands, okay, so this is the complete guide to tarot and astrology. You can find a link for that on Amazon in my Amazon store below, or it's available many other places. This card is actually Saturn decan in the sign of Sagittarius. So that's kind of freedom from burdens too. It is a fire element, but 10 is completion. So, this card is saying again that you feel like you've lost focus, perhaps taken on a heavy load, although Saturn, of course, is mastery as well. And I think you'll probably find that if you can step into this place of trust, then you will realize that you can release the sense of having taken on too much and move forward. So that's the card. Now let's dive in, look at the astrology itself. I want to show you the chart first of all, then we're going to talk about a lot of things. So the full moon eclipse is at 25 degrees, 40 minutes Pisces, and that means it's opposing the sun at 25 degrees, 40 minutes Virgo. It's also conjunct Neptune, which makes it huge. It's also conjunct Sorceress Circe, which has just traveled back into Pisces right before this eclipse. It's also conjunct Hecate, the way shower, who I always have behind me here, the triple moon goddess who holds her torch and lights your way forward. Mercury is the guide for this end of the eclipse because we can't separate the eclipse out. It's a Pisces eclipse, yes, but we also have to work with the polarity sign Virgo. Mercury is the guide for this sign and is back in Virgo and is conjunct Vesta, so I'll talk about all of that. Neptune is the modern guide for this sign, so both rulers, so to speak, or guides are involved in this eclipse as well, which makes it extra powerful. Jupiter is the traditional guide for Pisces and is in a wide square to the eclipse. There's also now that Pluto has moved back into Capricorn till November the 19th, he's moving back on the day I'm recording, September the 1st. We have this active mini grand trine between Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto on the eclipse, although it is going to separate a little bit as Uranus goes retrograde. But this mini grand trine is going to take us through the end of these earth and water signs and into fire and air. I talked about that with Steve Judd on my channel. I've talked about the eclipses as well with a fabulous astrologer who I'm going to be inviting to do more work with me. Her name, well, she's Starhead, and anyway, you'll find it. I'll link to them in this video. What else could I say about this? Well, look at this pattern as well. So we've got this mini grand trine making a beautiful kite pattern. So also an Earth grand trine as well, pointing at this Pisces, with the release being the Pisces full moon. So it's so many endings. It's so many beginnings, birthing something new. I'll talk about all of that. But while we're on the patterns, I do want you to notice that the eclipses are at the nodes are at 6 degrees. They stay at the same degree through the eclipses. And I use the true calculation that shows that. And this means that because this is in Pisces and the nodes are still in Aries Libra, this is the first eclipse that's kind of straddling both Pisces and Aries and Virgo and Libra. And the nodes are going to move back into Pisces and Virgo in January. So this is kind of a liminal eclipse in so many ways. But while we're on the patterns as well, the nodes at 6 degrees are still in square to Ceres and Pholus and Mars, forming a cardinal grand cross that's forcing and pushing change in many ways. So, this is an eclipse and a half. It's quite magical. I'm going to say as well that Eris is involved because she is in this semi-sextile to the moon, almost exactly on the eclipse. So these eclipses are really going to shake things up further, but in a good way, in my opinion. But I can't also mention Venus. I've got to mention Venus too. She is in a quincunx with the moon on this full moon in her own sign where she loves to be in Libra. And that's an aspect of adjustment that's also saying, just release everything, release the past, release, your burdens, release your worries, release your fears. It's time to birth something new. Everything I look at is pointing towards this future that I see that is, we're coming out of this birth canal, if you like, and really starting to birth the new. This is the biggest shift in human consciousness in ever, pretty much. Well, I think it is. So anyway, let's look at the actual energy of the eclipse itself. And for that, I'm going to go to timeanddate.com, which gives some fabulous maps and details. So we'll be looking at this again for the next eclipse as well. That's on October the 2nd. But let's stick with this one first. So it's going to be on September the 18th, depending where you are. So I'm saying September the 17th, but some parts of the world, it's September the 18th. It's going to be visible in Europe, much of Asia, Africa, North America, South America, Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean, Arctic, and Antarctica. It's covering a whole swathe of kind of energy of the world where people live mostly. There's, the biggest population centers of the world are covered in this. Um, uh, Russia, China, and Australia, you don't get any of it. So, you're going to be less affected by it, in my opinion. But this is another of the reasons, in my opinion, why this is going to bring such change. Okay, so just to really, what is the West in many ways? It's if you want to go and look at it, you can look at timeanddate.com. If you just search timeanddate.com and eclipses 2024, you will find this page. You can see the timings here when they begin, and you can but it's only a partial one. You won't really see a lot. So let me what this eclipse looks like. This is the little bit that is going to be covered of the moon. So, you can, I love seeing eclipses, but you might just want to feel this one, right? So, it's not a blood red moon eclipse. We've got one of those next year, which is a total. Now, why else is this moon absolutely astounding to me in so many ways? Well, because we have Saturn and Neptune involved in the eclipse, really, because Saturn is in Pisces too and is only 10 degrees from the eclipse, which is pretty close. But also, all this year and into next, we've had this series of what's called lunar occultations. Every month almost for days, and I did a quick video on that as well. You can find that in my YouTube channel. I gave the dates of all of those. Well, we're having a lunar occultation on Saturn on Tuesday, September the 17th at 3:07 Pacific, which is 6:07 Eastern, and that is going to be visible in the contiguous United States, Australia, Canada, and Mexico, and other places. That means that the moon is passing in front of Saturn. So that might actually be visible for you as well. So I did the, if you want to get out and look, if it's visible where you are. Again, I'll post the link to the details of these occultations in the description. But not only that, at like in the middle of the night, very close to the eclipse. So the eclipse itself is at 10:34 Eastern at on the 17th here in the US. But just a little bit after that at 2:04 a.m. on the 18th Eastern, so you can adjust for your time zones, and you won't be able to see this, but you'll feel it. The moon will pass in front of Neptune, creating another lunar occultation, which is visible from places including Canada, again, the contiguous United States, Mexico, and Alaska, and others. I'll post the link if you want to look more into that. Now, occultations, lunar occultations, are kind of like eclipses in themselves. So we have a lunar eclipse with two occultations happening at the same time. This is just a major, major reset, and it's huge. We've got these other lunar occultations of Saturn and Neptune. Again, I'll share the links so you can look at those. I'll share also In the thumbnail I create for this video, at the start, I will post the meme I created that's got all the dates of all these lunar occultations. But this one's occurring with an eclipse. It's just huge. This is major, major endings, to go back to that card, releasing and endings and birthing something new. So I'm just going to talk about the eclipse itself. So let's start with the moon in Pisces. Pisces is the most oceanic water sign, but it's kind of that floating cloud of unknowing. It's the amniotic fluid of creation. It's both endings and beginnings, because Neptune and Pisces dissolve, but they also we come from chaos. If you look at the origin stories of most um, uh, creation myths, we come from chaos and water emerging from the fluid. We are birthed literally physically from the amniotic fluid. We are formed in the amniotic fluid of the womb. So this is Pisces for you, and it's an energy of complete trust and faith and just allowing the process to unfold. And then we have the moon conjunct Neptune, and Neptune is the modern guide for Pisces, and does also have this revealing but washing away quality. This is like cleansing your feet, for faith. This is like letting go and letting God. This is surrender and trust and having faith in everything. But it's also the collective unconscious and how we're interconnected with everything that is. So, and the moon is our emotions, and the moon is partially going to be covered, so not fully. So it's not a full set emotionally, so it's allowing us to tune into that interconnectedness. But this is also a mutable sign, Pisces, and so it's very alchemical. And I mentioned that we also have asteroid Circe right there at 29 degrees Pisces, just moved back into the sign of Pisces for this eclipse. I don't always talk about her, but I do kind of follow her a little bit. And she is the sorceress. She is alchemy itself, and she is the divine feminine. She was if you've never read the book Circe by Madeline Miller, it's a great read. She kind of retells the myth. Circe turned Odysseus's men into pigs, into swines, because their behavior was terrible. But, in my opinion, she was actually using kind of psilocybin or herbs and things to make them think they were swine, because she was a medicine woman who used potions and things, and was a healer as well in many ways. But she was, she was banished to an island to live on her own by Helios, the sun god, who was opposing this eclipse. And she is there kind of going, release that, release that, release that. The divine feminine is rising, but in the way of this energy of love, forgiveness. That's also Pisces, and letting go. I'm also seeing, as we approach this eclipse, more and more people who were in the thrall of the cult of MAGA, which is like Pisces is also illusion and delusion, kind of seeing clearly that they were wrong. And, but the message is overall that it's okay. I forgive myself. I was wrong. We can forgive them, everybody can forgive them and say, come back in, you're welcome, come back into this wrong. And we can all be subject to illusion and delusion at times. Now, why is this significant on this full moon? Because I mentioned that it's widely square to Jupiter in Gemini at 20 degrees, and that is directly on Trump's chart. And Jupiter is expansion, And Jupiter in Gemini is kind of about big ideas and big truth, but the square to this eclipse, I think more and more people are going to realize that, you know, they were in the thrall of this person who, you know, created a cult. And I think, you know, this is going to wash away the burden of being in a cult. And, you know, I ask you to open your hearts in that Piscean way and just let go of, you know, any if of this, you know, what they did in the past, and say it's okay, we can move forward together. All right, so, you know, I had to bring my election interest in, but that's because it's everything in the astrology is pointing to that. But it's also happening elsewhere. You know, this energy of letting go of these old beliefs, these old um, illusions and depths, and starting to, the clouds are parting, okay, on this eclipse, literally. The occultation to Saturn is letting go of the old structures, the old rules, but also the old limiting beliefs. It's just such a magical eclipse. But now I want to move to the opposite point, Virgo, because it is a full moon. It's an opposition. And Virgo is part of this kite pattern that I pointed out on the eclipse. 25 degrees Virgo with Mercury, the guide, in Virgo, and Hecate, my wonderful goddess, triple moon goddess, way shower, who lights your way at a crossroads. Virgo is also mutable, but Virgo is more humble. Humble beginnings, more service. Let's get practical. You know, let's bring this down to earth in a practical way of how we can be of service and bring all this massive transformation in that's happening, and bring it down to earth in a very practical way and be useful in this world. And may all our actions be practical in Virgo, and discerning, be more discerning. Where we've been in thrall, maybe now we can be discerning. You know, I've been guilty. I didn't vote for Trump, but you know, I was a delegate in the 26th election for Bernie Sanders. And I'm not saying Bernie Sanders was a cult, but there was, because I think he's, you know, the ultimate Virgo. He's too practical. He works within the system. But a lot of people around it, and I got drawn in, it became a bit cultish. And, you know, the Democratic Party's just as evil as the other side and all that kind of thing. Well, you know, the Democratic Party is not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Virgo seeks perfection, but it's about still actions as you seek that perfection, and taking action, humble action, and practical steps towards perfection. And it's okay to be critical, but then you still have to be discerning and admit where you could be wrong. And I was wrong about a lot of it, because there was, you know, some of the things that I believed in that 2016 election that didn't come from Bernie himself were wrong, and I was wrong. I was not wrong to support Bernie, but I was wrong in what beliefs I took on back then. But we're in this time of shifting beliefs, and it's time to let go of that and forgive yourself as well and move forward. If you were, but this applies to everything where you've made mistakes, where you have changed your perspective and perceptions over this recent time that we're in, and where they're still changing on this mutable full moon. It's okay to admit where you were wrong and be a bit humble and go, I can do differently this time, and move forward. Then it's conjunct Hecate, triple moon goddess, at the last degree of Virgo, almost exactly opposing Circe that I've already talked about. At her essence, Hecate really is about bringing together mind, body, and spirit holistically, and working holistically from the future. both in health and in your meaningful work and right work in this world. And then all this is, square to the galactic center as well in Sagittarius, which is bringing in new information, new beliefs, new truths. Sagittarius is guided by Jupiter, so they're in this wide opposition still. We are bringing down new faith, hope, and optimism and new beliefs in this shifting timeline that we're in such a big way. And a lot of this new information and new truths are coming from the center of our solar system, the galactic center. And then we have Pluto still aspecting all of this as well. And Pluto has gone back into Capricorn to finish the transformations that have been occurring since 2008. If we think about Pluto's journey through Capricorn, Pluto's been digging up the shadow and revealing what's not working, but we had to see it to change it. Now Pluto is just going back to that 29th degree of Capricorn to say now's the time to finish the transformations we've been invited to create and to finish looking at that shadow that's all been dug up and change it, because Pluto is kind of death and rebirth. So it's time for the rebirth, right? In all the structures of our lives, so many ways. And then Uranus, which actually also just stationed retrograde today, as I record this on September the 1st, is there, bringing radical change, still conjunct fixed star Algol, Medusa, the patriarchy, in Venus sign is saying, make radical changes. It's time for a revolution. And it's pretty much turning out, and I think it will remain to be a peaceful revolution primarily. But please ceasefire in Gaza. I do see that coming at some point. I do see some resolution there. Okay, because in that case as well, what's being revealed there is some of the old shadow in our structures and systems and alliances. So all that's shifting as well. But also, it kind of, hate to say it, had to kind of happen to reveal some of the toxicity and poisons that were happening in that whole situation that's been going on for a long, long time. But I think there's going to be radical change coming there as well. But do remember that eclipses unfold over time, okay? And also going back to Pisces, that's also kind of very toxicity, toxic beliefs, spreading poisons, things like that kind of thing. Interesting as well that as we approach this lunar eclipse, we did have monkeypox talk. I haven't seen much more about that, but now there's talk of West Nile virus in here in Utah. I don't know, probably some other places as well. So there is some kind of creeping, spready things. COVID is also definitely rampant again. And interestingly, I talked to my friend Tiffany Walker, also on my podcast, who's a psychic medium, basically, and she had very bad COVID and a head injury and had a very rough time of it, and she had long COVID as well combined. It took her a long time to recover. But she had that, and when I had COVID the first time, I actually remember coming out of it saying, I feel like I've been spiritually altered. I feel like it was some kind of spiritual upgrade. And so, and I feel, of course, sad for those who've lost and sad for those who have long COVID, because there's always the yin and the yang. But you tune into it yourself if you've had COVID or have COVID now or get it now, and see if you feel like this thing that's weird, totally COVID, is kind of shifting and altering you in some way, because I truly think that our kind of DNA is literally kind of being altered in some way. So lastly, I did mention that Venus in Libra, bringing, peace, harmony, balance, all those good things, having a very quick journey through Libra is in this quincunx aspect to the eclipse in Pisces, and she is exalted in Pisces as well. So this is bringing more love in and saying, let's come back together. Let's start talking to each other. And then I will quickly mention the Cardinal Grand Cross, Mars in Cancer, opposing Ceres and Pholus in Capricorn. Ceres way out of bounds. I've talked about this so much time, still in square to the nodes, which is always another big pivot point, turning point at the bendings of the nodes. Ceres is moving towards the North Node. They are moving towards each other. So is Pholus when each station's direct. Mars is moving towards the South Node. And this is on the Cancer Capricorn line. It's kind of birth and old age, but also safety and security and emotional security, facing off to Capricorn, the structures of our lives. Just another step in the death of the hierarchical, top-down, structural kind of control and domination that we've been living under for so long. We hear it already. We hear people saying, end trickle-down economics, end this, let's restore more balance. Don't give tax cuts to the rich anymore, kind of let's help the working class, which is very Virgo. Just over and over again, these aspects just keep giving this message. And we are right in this major crux of change. But one other thing before I just read the symbols, because I will go on if there's so much more I could say, but I think you get the idea. Vesta is in Virgo too, the sacred hearth, very close to Mercury. It's like come back to the center, to the hearth, to the inner flame, to what really matters and has meaning. All right, so there's all that going on as well. The symbols, I think that was everything I wanted to say. Oh no, there was one other thing, unsurprisingly. This is the first eclipse in Pisces and Virgo in 19 years, but also since fixed star Regulus entered the sign of Virgo from our perspective at the end of 2011. And now over the next when the nodes move into Virgo and Pisces in January, there'll be a 19-month period that they're in there, but then we'll have that shift over at the end. So about 2 years, over the next 2 years, as the outer planets change signs, the South Node will be moving towards Regulus to meet in Virgo for the first time. So just another indicator of it. Now, fixed stars don't move because they're fixed. We move. It's the precession. But the Regulus was in Leo for 2,160 years and is now moved into Virgo, that more humble, service-oriented, meaningful, discerning sign. So everything's moving towards that. All right. I didn't mention the numbers. It's at 25 degrees. I've somehow managed to put in 28. So let me just change that. I always go to my favorite numerology website, which is in a link in the description below, but it's numerology the numbers and their meanings .blogspot.com. If you search numerology blogspot, she generally comes up first. But the number 25, okay, is the dreamer, the philosopher, leaves the world behind and enters into the world of creative imagination. The 2 has its energy of bringing things together and finding balance. And the 5 is a number of change and adaptability. And the 2 together, 2 plus 5 makes 7, which is mysticism, intuition, research, and knowledge. This is about dreaming this new world into being, really. And I truly believe we are. I truly believe we can as well. If you can dream it, you can be it. Okay, so what you're putting out there, don't put fear out there, put possibility, put dreams out there, and let go of that burden of fear and let go of what ifs and the coulds and the shoulds and all that, and step into this beautiful time of magic. Now to the symbols. Okay, so the Pisces new symbol, we go up with the symbols. So the Sabian symbol is a really interesting one because it's on a full moon eclipse. It says a new moon that divides its influences. And the theme is divergence, according to Blaine Bovey on sabiansymbol.typepad.com. I kind of like his interpretations, but I am going to go and look at Dane Rudyard's as well because it's such a big eclipse. So this is new moon symbolisms are about new starts, fresh starts, seeding significance. So I've long felt as part of the big shift we're in that full moons often feel like new moons as much as new moons do. And new moons often feel like full moons, like ending things as well, because it's the end of the lunar cycle. So I think that's another thing we kind of have to get away from, that new moons are only fresh starts. That works for kind of things like planting in gardens and so on, but energetically, it's this constant cycle of new beginnings and endings, right? But I like that this one is divergence. We are diverging from the path we were on in so many ways and creating a new one. Now the moon is memories as well. And Blaine Bovey says an old emotionally charged memory can bring one to repetition or inspire a new course. You take your pick. Doesn't that remind you of what I said about all these people who voted for Trump going, I've taken a new course? Okay, that memory, I feel bad that I did that, and I'm moving. Now, this is happening at every level. These are just examples to inspire your memory, right? We're letting go and forgiving ourselves for, this memory that is emotionally charged when it comes up in so many ways. But I'll let you think what that means for you as we approach this eclipse. So Dane Rudhyar's, he actually says the symbol is watching the very thin moon crescent appearing at sunset. Different people realize that the time has come to go ahead with their different projects. Now, if you remember, I showed you the eclipse path. It's not exactly a crescent, it's two crescents together, forming this little sliver of energy that's going to be blocked out of the moon's light by the Earth's shadow onto the moon. So, those crescents are birthing something new and allowing you to go ahead on this new course and this new path. His keynote for this is a keen appreciation of the value of individualized responses to any challenge of life. He says, Rudyard said, the rather obscure original notation for this degree, a new moon that divides its influences, when translated into practical terms, Virgo, refers to the fact that confronted with the opportunity to expand your energy along new lines, modern individuals will react according to their own personal characters. One basic cosmic spiritual impulse will lead these varied personalities to take equally varied steps. In any society that glorifies individualism, everybody should therefore accept this fact and not try to compel other individuals to conform to a single pattern of response. And then he said this should lead to a realization of the fallacy of totalitarianism. Isn't that interesting, thinking of the times we're in? At times, we can all act like despots, demanding that others react to any situation exactly as we do. I'll let you think on that. Now to the John Sandbach's symbols, and I'm actually going to read them all. So the Omega symbol, he says, is transforming and experimental, which is very alchemical, which I've already spoken about. He says it's a writer endlessly revising his work. We're endlessly authoring our new story, and at the moment it's huge. Saturn is being occulted, as I mentioned, right before the eclipse. Saturn is literally authoritarianism, but also the root of author. We get to write this new story, okay? So we are in this time of shifting, change, and mutation. We are all individually and collectively revising our work in the world and our story going forward. There you go. Sandbach also says the degree angel is Hebu Hebuhia, contacting departed souls and healing. So the ancestors might be coming through in this one too. He says this degree is always moving deeper into the attempt to express itself. It's attempting to overcome the barriers that stand in the way of connecting with other people, and so works with whatever it has as a vehicle of communication, trying now this and now that way of transmitting its ideas, trying now this and now that way of transmitting its ideas. If it can put aside frustration and any feelings of alienation as it approaches this task slowly and patiently, the results can open up new vistas of understanding. Now, the Chandra symbol for this degree is the Aurora Borealis. He says this degree focuses on the overlighting spiritual forces at work in all situations. It sees everything in its expanded context as being imbued with overtones and shimmerings of the divine. This awareness is not easy to express. I try, but I'm feeling this so big time. But the mere witnessing of it brings some of this energy into the world around them and helps others to loosen up and lighten up and to soften the tightness of their focus. Just as the writer of the Omega symbol, through constant revision, is trying to allow more and more of his vision to shine through their words, the one who witnesses the northern lights needs to accept into his mundane existence the beautiful iridescence streaming in from the spiritual world, or I'm going to say the cosmos, because remember the galactic center is connected on all of this. Neptune in Pisces is this energy. This is just magical. Now, the Pleiadian symbol, which is the rechanneled Sabian symbol, says, within the shadowed part of the moon, right? Remember that little, I'll perhaps show that picture again, actually, before we finish, just to finish with. Within the shadowed part of the moon, a tiny momentary flare of light is seen. Oh. Now then, on the Azoth symbol, which is, I'm still getting to grips with his Azoth symbols. He says that they kind of represent the IC in a natal chart, the nadir, the very bottom, which is something that's on kind of really the deep inside, but also kind of something we can't see because it's so deeply hidden, because it was on the other side of the earth when you were born. So if we think of it like that, the symbol, and I'll let you take what you want out of this one, is on a lawn, boys chasing a ball that seems to have a life of its own. So it's like we're chasing this ball, trying to catch it and play with it, but the ball's kind of going all over the place, doing its own thing, like the cosmos. Well, actually, what that means for me is we are quantum beings playing with all these molecules and waves that are bouncing off each other constantly, and how we play the game and how we play with all this bouncing energy is what matters. Approach it with joy and fun, like chasing a ball. That's how it speaks to me. Oh, I do want to say the seed degree. He gives seed degrees. Maybe I'll give you this link as well so you can read it all. Is Aquarius 12, which is a man struck by lightning, is miraculously unharmed. Having contacted the full force of our inspiration, we now wish to allow it to shine through our works. Amazing. So, it's a lot, this eclipse. It is a triple eclipse because of those two occultations. It's visible for so many. It's just huge. But I do want to show you, oh, where is it? The path of that eclipse again. Let me find it. There it is. I do want to show you this path again, and just I want you to take notice. Look, bearing in mind the symbols that we've just read. This figure here. Now, in some ways, this is half of the Vesica Pisces, right? This is the Vesica Pisces, right? Birthing something new. It's also kind of the uh, a symbol for part of women's genitals. It's what's coming out of this little patch of the moon. What light is going to come through this in 16 days, 6 hours, 53 minutes? What amazing times we're in. What amazing times to be alive. I love you. Approach this full moon with the energy of you are being alchemized and transforming and authoring this your story moving forward, and we are all collectively authoring the new story of everything. Love you. See you next time.